please understand that we need to clarify what the threat actually is. Talking to members of the Clippers organization, numerous members, along with people close to them, what you're hearing is something very, very simple, something I alluded to just the other day. If Donald Sterling were to win the case, Skip Bayless, and remain owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, indeed it would be a problem. But it's not as if it were a protracted, elongated legal battle that Chris Paul would say, forget the $107 million contract that I signed for. Doc Rivers would say, forget the $7 million a year I'm making, along with being a controller as the president of basketball operations as well as the head coach of this franchise. We're walking away from all of that. No, that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is it will be entertained in the event that Donald Sterling wins this case and they are unable to get rid of him as an owner for the Los Angeles Clippers, which, by the way, none of them believe will be the case. The NBA doesn't believe it will be the case. They believe that this matter will be rectified and they will win this case. The Clippers, meaning the players, Chris Paul, led by Chris Paul, the coaching staff led by Doc Rivers, along with Mr. Parsons and everybody else, they all believe they're going to win this case. Doc Rivers, Chris Paul, anybody affiliated with the Clippers organization, when such proclamations are made of the mindset that we'll walk away, that we'll potentially walk away from this upcoming season, they're alluding to only and only if Donald Sterling were to win the case and be granted the right to continue ownership of the team and running the franchise. They don't anticipate that that will happen. Nobody does. But if that were to happen, that's the only situation under which they're taking this position. So it is a real threat, but only if Donald Sterling wins the case, which nobody anticipates will transpire.
What happened yesterday to me was a very shrewd move by Chris Paul, because I took this as his testifying against Donald Sterling in court, but from a distance, not having to be under oath, obviously, but to send a message, hopefully to the judge presiding, just how deeply Donald Sterling's remarks impacted the heart, body, and soul of one Chris Paul III, to the depths that he won't play for this man again if this man is allowed to continue to own the team. So I want to make it clear to all of our viewers who haven't closely followed this case. And Stephen A., at some points it's way over my head and maybe even over your head. But the way I'm reading this, the presiding judge, and I hope I'm going to say his name right because I've never heard it pronounced in public, Michael Levanis, I'm pretty sure he has just become the most important person in all of Clippers Nation, if not in the NBA, because after Monday's closing arguments in this case, he will have the power to unilaterally rule that Donald Sterling is out and the sale will go through. And if I'm reading this correctly, that judge could rule and not be challenged. There could be no appealing of his ruling. So it's now up to, if I'm saying his name correctly, Michael Levanis to decide the fate of the Clippers and maybe even the fate of Chris Paul next year and Doc Rivers next year. Because I'm with you. If somehow it has been decided once and for all in court, sorry, that Donald Sterling can go ahead and own this team till death do him part, then we got to revisit this, because then I'm with you. I think CP3 would be very serious about wanting out, and I think Doc Rivers would not want to coach another basketball game for owner Donald Sterling.
Well, we have to make sure to remind our audience just the caliber of individuals that we're talking about here. Doc Rivers is one of the most conscientious individuals you'll find in this profession. We all know his background. We all know the kind of things that he's alluded to. We've done features on him. He's in an interracial marriage. Obviously, he talked about the sensitivity of growing up, being ostracized, being maligned. He talked about his days as a member of the San Antonio Spurs. You know, when something happened, somebody set his house on fire and what have you because of his marital situation. You know, he's endured racial prejudices and things of that nature. So there's a level of sensitivity that he has. He just exudes incredible poise and what have you. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't rake his nerves. It doesn't mean that it doesn't affect that of himself and his family and his extended family, which happens to now be the Los Angeles Clippers organization. And he's a man that's been known for standing on principle. So it's not beyond the pale that Doc Rivers would take such a position if Donald Sterling indeed would have won this case and be an owner. On the side of Chris Paul, I think one of the things that's been underestimated is that because of Doc Rivers' leadership and the willingness of Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, Jamal Crawford, and the rest of the Los Angeles Clippers, their willingness to lean on Doc Rivers, particularly during their first-round playoff series against the Golden State Warriors when all of this mess unfolded, people have used that to sort of interpret that Chris Paul was a bit passé or what have you. I'm here to tell you, I know for a fact that was not the case. That is not the case. Chris Paul does operate behind the scenes as not only the star and franchise player of the Los Angeles Clippers, but also the president of the NBA Players Association. He has to exercise diplomacy. He has to employ pause and proper professional decorum, and he can't just go out there gung-ho, speaking and verbalizing things irresponsibly and acting strictly off of emotion. We have to understand that although Chris Paul could be a bit loquacious at times, the fact is he's measured, he's a highly intelligent young man, and he's a man of principle that's going to take a position on things of this nature. He's just going to do the kind of things that are most effective. So in the end, the combination of Chris Paul, along with that of Doc Rivers, leads me to believe this is not a joke. This is not something that could easily be shoved aside, and Donald Sterling had better get booted out of there. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem that could potentially linger into the 2014-2015 NBA season, and it is absolutely the last thing on earth that the NBA neither needs nor wants.